Hello and welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. My guest today is Keith McNally. Welcome to the show,
Hey,
Dr. Keith.
thank you so much. We tried this the first time. Let's hope the second time works.
That's right. I mean, we have had this. I've said this about past guests about how long it's taken from our first conversation to actual recording, but you win the award. I don't even know when we first talked, but I do know we first connected on LinkedIn a while back, and we're going to get into more of your story and why LinkedIn is so pivotal to it in a moment. But first, let me start with asking you, what were the values and beliefs that were instilled in you as you were growing up?
I grew up Catholic slash Christian, and so not necessarily in terms of faith, but very much in routine, go to church and those kind of things, Christmas, Easter, all of the holidays and so forth. But the values really were intrinsic to being yourself, being kind to others, and most importantly, do what's right. Now, those are vague terms, and so we really need to dive deep into what they really mean because as we grow and mature and as I've changed over the years, those definitions have changed as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I'm trying to think. I don't think I've had a guest who's recognized how much those values can change, even though you may still um, subscribe to them. Their meanings have changed.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because, if you're talking about growing up, now I'm talking about growing up as young as I remember, 4 or 5, and then, I was, quote unquote, Catholic Christian for all the way through my teen. And I say that because I went to parochial school. My mom actually
Hmm.
signed me in, and I'm in parochial school. So, the first everything about that is, you're going to a church related school, and the Bible sits somewhere in the classroom. And so there's the academics, and then there's the Bible academics, and going to church, every Sunday, sometimes twice on Sunday. So mom was very much intrinsic in saying, this is what I believe, this is what I'm teaching you to believe. And then, after, high school, it was like, I'm on my own. And so I had to kind of figure out and refigure out what values were and what was important to me as I grew older.
How did they change? Because it's interesting that you say that as well, because so many people just take what they learned and those are their values for the rest of their life. Like they never question or examine them. They just take them as absolute truth. This is what it is.
Well, after high school, I joined the Marine Corps. So a lot of the, things that I learned were not applied as a Marine. And so, but that was just a portion of my life. And going from being a Marine to, stepping into an academic career, meaning going to college and getting my graduate and then eventually getting my PhD. Um, you have to, adapt, learn, and I use the word mature a lot. And I think for me, that is very much applicable, maturing into who you are and then maturing into who you are next, and then constantly going through those evolutions. I held on tightly. So, there's a distinction between Catholic and then Christianity. And if I always forget, the motto is all Christians are Catholic or Catholics are regardless, I didn't necessarily continue to adhere to, going to church on Sundays and recognizing, the holidays for what they are. But I always held on to some type of ideology that, people are important. Being kind to others is also important. And then trying to navigate the adult space by, again, doing what is right. And primarily, we're familiar with the Ten Commandments, don't hurt somebody else and honor your mom and dad and all those other kind of, areas of life. But even over time, you know, you change and appreciate those ideologies, those values a bit differently. And I know I did.
Hmm. Yeah, it's important to note. I think this is one of the key takeaways, and we're just a few minutes into it, but that that evolution of our individuality of ourselves is crucial.
Mm.
Like we have to keep growing. We have to keep evolving into the next level or the next version of ourselves. Do you agree?
I do agree. Unfortunately, I didn't learn to do that. So, and a lot of that was I just didn't know who I was. I was trying to be somebody. I think my expectations that my mom held of me, or my sister, or whomever, or my boss, always kind of played a role. And so I never really kind of figured out who I was really. And I'll open disclaimer, I'm 55 at the time of this recording. So I've spent a lot of years not knowing who I was. And so because of that, I've faced some real life challenges that hopefully we'll get an opportunity to talk about.
Yeah, I'm going to go into that right now, but first I wanted to just say you're not alone. Like in the I'm not sure, it took me all this time or however long it took. That's how long it takes and even if it takes longer.
Yeah.
Um I was going to say something and I totally lost my train of thought, but that's okay. It'll come back. Um yeah, so did you feel like you had to be what somebody else wanted you to be, and so you were kind of a chameleon?
The issue for me was I didn't know who I was. And that's kind of a really blanket broad statement to say, at this point, if I were to make a comparison, I know I am a Virgo, and that's a zodiac sign for those who don't know. And that actually kind of does really align with what I'm trying to accomplish.
Mm,
Um, the other things are, I'm a veteran. I'm a U.S. veteran. What does that mean in terms of its value for my own life? I'm a dad. That has another value separate from everything else that I've just mentioned. I am a PhD. I have a doctorate degree. So, what value does that add? And so, all of these things kind of cumulatively create who you are. But even at that point, I'm only talking about titles
mhm,
until I kind of do a deeper dive into not just what my titles are, but what really is important to me. What is my life about? What is my philosophy of living? I really didn't tap into any of these things until rather recently. So, and recently meaning the last 3 years. And
mhm.
so that's how recent all of this
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, I think all of those titles have meaning, but they only have the meaning that we personally ascribe to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into the story, the part of your story where you may have been telling people everything was fine, but it wasn't fine, or were you not even to the point of telling people it was fine? Was it like did people know that you weren't fine?
I I hid for many, many years. My life was in a bubble. And so, open disclosure here with your audience, I have attempted suicide 5 times, and so I'm sure there's going to be a disclaimer at the beginning of this conversation before
Mhm.
your podcast airs. So, U.S. combat vet with PTSD, depression, and suicide ideation. Primarily, it was my mental health diagnoses. Um, First time in 1996, fifth time in 2021, and so in all of these things, they're dealing with the same types of variables in my life that kind of cycle through and cause me to give up hope, not really recognize my own value, and of course, not being clear on who I am, my identity, who I really am, cycles me through these things. And so, from the fifth suicide attempt in 2021, I had to figure out all the questions that you're asking me. Who are you? Why do you exist? What do you want to achieve in life? And really, what's the path that you're walking? And so, when I made that decision to say, okay, I need to do things differently and I needed to figure out how, that was when my life started to change. And that's when I started applying meaning, value, and real core principles to my existence.
What was different from that point from 2021 that you are doing differently than from the first attempt in 96? Because I imagine that they didn't just like leave you out on your own. Like, did you have mental health support after the first time and after the second time? And like, I mean, I'm not laughing at it. I'm laughing because like, how is this time different? And it is different. I know you're different now.
It's different. No, there was no mental health support, and it's odd to say that because my first job, my first career out of college was a mental health caseworker. So I
Mm,
know there was support out
wow.
there, and I know there was resources out there. But again, you're talking about one, I'm a man, and that's
Yeah.
actually a significant variable.
Yes.
Um, Two, I'm a Marine. That's another
Right.
significant
Mm-hmm.
variable. Um, Taboo, shame, all of those elements kind of combined, saying you don't go after the help that you need. And so I never approached it from that perspective. I just kind of sucked it up, figured out, okay, I, I, I failed. Let's take the next breath and go forward. So again, 96, 2007, 13, 17, and, like I said, 21.
Mm-hmm.
What's different this time? No clear idea, except that I do have a daughter. She's 14 now.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted things to be different. And maybe that's the difference. I
Yeah.
actually wanted things to be different. I wanted to be different. This had to make sense. Life needed to make sense. Again, 3 years ago, so 51, 52 years old, life needed to make sense. It didn't make sense. And I needed to figure out just that.
What was the very first step that you took to help life make sense?
Connecting with people. One of the things I recognized about my life was I had no real connections with people,
Mm,
not even family. So friends, family, associates, people professionally, that's always going to be the case. But how well do you really know people?
right.
Who can you really call on at midnight to say, hey, things are bad. I need to talk. How many people? Most people can't even number them on one hand.
Right.
That those types of friendships, those types of connections really do exist in your life. For me, maybe one, and possibly more likely zero. So that needed to change because I recognized, for whatever recognition there is, that if I didn't change that, the next time I came across this dark path, it would probably have been the end. It probably would have been the end. And so that was the first thing I recognized that needed to change.
Yeah. I mean, we live in a world where loneliness is an epidemic. And I
Mm,
saw a study it was several years ago. I don't know what it is now, and I wouldn't imagine it's changed much unless it's gotten worse. But to your point of not having even enough people to, fill out one hand,
mhm,
most people didn't have even two
mhm.
people that they could call. And I find that shocking. Shocking and also not surprising.
And scary and disappointing too.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those
Yeah.
things.
And I think it's gotten worse now with social media because everybody is so, let me put forth my best face. And everybody's looking at that going, oh, well, everybody else is so happy and connected,
Mhm,
but I'm not.
mhm.
So what's wrong with me?
Yeah, yeah. And actually, that's kind of I used that to my advantage, to be quite honest. The only place I was really on in terms of social media was LinkedIn.
Uh huh.
Now, LinkedIn is what we know it is. And typically, even if you've got like 1,000 people following you or 10,000 people connected to you, you may really know a dozen of those people.
Right.
Um, and so the same rule applies. I had 2,000 people on my LinkedIn network. I may literally have known a dozen. And again, the same rule applies. Who could I have called in time of need? Probably zero. And so, but because now my intention was different, I wanted to make connections. And at a deeper level, and what I found over the past 3 years, moving from that point to this point, I wanted to have conversations with people, very much like this, but not necessarily record it, just having
Yeah.
conversations with people
Yeah.
as a means of connecting. And so that's exactly what I did. I started tapping on people's virtual door, and then kind of reaching out at the same time, uh, trying to make, hey, I'm this person on LinkedIn. Would you like to connect? To the latter, people were connecting with me. So again, more profiles and resumes than actual, people that I knew.
Yeah.
But what I started to do was actually have those conversations. And what I was finding, and put it in context, we're in COVID. So this is the tail end of COVID. We're in quarantine. So everybody, the world is shut down and turned upside down. And people were wanting to connect. Now, not for the same reasons that I was wanting to
Yeah.
connect. It's a social need. People needed to
Right.
connect. We're isolated. We jump on a Google call, we jump on a Zoom call, whatever platform you're using. People were wanting to connect. More so, people were wanting to share their stories because, and this is the flip side of COVID, people saw the need for personal change. People saw the need for personal transformation. And for whatever reason, serendipitously, I think that's a word, or the universe, whatever you
Yep.
want to call it, the people that I was connecting with and having conversations with were the people who were doing that intentionally. They had been in the process of, or because of COVID, needed to make personal change. And so that meant exercise, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, gratitude, whatever that looked like for them. It could have been a career change. That
Yeah.
was some of the changes people were making. But many of it was personal. Many of it was looking into that mirror in the bathroom, not liking who they saw. Really, we were taking introspective looks at ourselves and saying, this isn't me.
Right.
And those people were making changes. And I started having conversations with them.
How did you choose the people that you were reaching out to?
It wasn't intentional. And even at times today, it's still not like I'm not reaching out to XYZ because, they wrote a book or they're a
Uh-huh.
speaker or any of the laundry list that we typically would reach out to somebody professionally. It was really just a matter of, do you want to have a conversation? That's
Yeah.
really as blatant
Like
as it can
like some
get.
kind of divine guidance of who to reach out to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really that was really it. The universe, God, spirit, whatever, you know, as a friend says, whatever God of your choosing is. Um,
Right.
that was really the platform. It was, giving up and saying, hey, do you want to have a conversation? And like I said, those who were making intentional changes wanted to have those conversations. And so what
Yeah.
I was doing, not knowingly, I know now, or, the universe has now told me, is living vicariously through their story, through those conversations, through their victories. I was finding out that maybe, just maybe, my life had meaning and value too. I didn't come to it till recently this year. So at the time of this recording, it's the tail end of 2024. And
Yeah.
so, just to put it in context, many, many years, went by in my life where I didn't have any of that. I was finding it in those conversations.
Yeah. Okay. So you were finding shreds of meaning for your life in the conversations you were having with other people
Hmm.
and hearing
Yeah.
their stories and hearing
Hmm.
their accomplishments and maybe also their pains.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly so. And little by little, baby step by baby step, I began to own my pain, my story, my narrative,
Mm.
and make sense of it. Um, I didn't want a sixth suicide attempt. I needed to learn how to change, didn't know how to do it. But again, those little gold nuggets. And so actually, I created a podcast from those
That's right.
conversations. I actually
Yeah.
created my first, what I call a podcast, or what people call a podcast. It's called the Question Guy Podcast. Um, it was just that. It was about people's personal transformation story. That was the essence. Once I got through, season one, once I
Yeah.
got through the first 20 conversations, it then, took its own form. And that was a lot of fun. I just recorded actually last week with Candace Snyder, the last Question Guy podcast episode. And so it served its purpose. It
Yeah.
actually did serve its purpose. I healed and learned how to heal through conversation and find value in my own life, find meaning and purpose.
Mm.
And I can wake up every day with a smile on my face. And so knowing that I've got value is a game changer. I don't necessarily like that phrase, but it totally is.
Yeah.
It totally is.
Well, I want to point out two things I think are key here, and that is one, that conversations with other people, it's not that is what pulled you
Mhm.
forward.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's a
It
good
wasn't
word. It
it
did
wasn't
pull me forward.
sitting and marinating in your own thoughts, because that was not taking you to a good place in the past. And I don't think, not that everybody's thoughts are necessarily negative or bad or not good for that, but I think it is true that conversations with others is what fuels growth. And two, you said baby step by baby step. And again, that is how any of us moves forward. It's not quantum leaps for the most part. It could be, but for the most part, it seems like it is one baby step at a time, and that's okay. As long as you're still going in the direction that you think you want to be going in. It doesn't even have to be exactly the right direction, right? You don't know necessarily.
And
You just
and,
keep taking those steps, and then you get led to wherever it is you're supposed to be.
and I'll be, kind of step in there as a Virgo who wants to know the path, because I'm and there's a reason why I said that. I'm very much in touch with my zodiac sign and kind of align with it.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm the type of person who wants to know the path, who wants to kind of know step one, step two, step three. The thing is, with the healing journey, that doesn't exist necessarily. You
Right.
you literally have to trust in, maybe there is a therapist, and now there is a therapist in my life.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. There are mentors in my life. There are people in my life who I can now call, um, probably on two hands now, but
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
at the very least, make a phone call, a text, and say, "Hey, I'm not in a bad space, but do you have time to talk?"
Yeah.
And more than likely, yeah, give me 24 hours. Let me rearrange my schedule. Let's hop on a Zoom. Let's whatever that space is.
Yeah.
So it is. Some of those baby steps are painstaking, no doubt at all. And there may be not a clear path forward, but if you release the discomfort of that, and I'll use
Mhm.
that word, the discomfort of that journey can be so powerful.
Yeah, it reminds me of that quote from Martin Luther King about you don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You I know you have more. I want to ask you about the other things that you did in addition to getting a therapist. There were many more things that you did to help yourself heal.
Mm.
What were those things?
Had more conversations. And so this is the kind of gamut. This is what's occurred in the past 3 years. So let's kind of give a real quick summary. People's personal story became their professional story. So I started Coach's Corner, which is another podcast / recording. People's personal story they wanted to make social impact. So I started the Envision Speaker Series. I still have conversations around people's story around suicide. That's a playlist on my YouTube channel. Because I'm a man and men's mental health is an issue that tends to get overlooked a lot. I started
Yeah.
a conversations around men's mental health with a colleague of mine, Mitch Gray. I'm a veteran, so I have conversations called Trail to Transformation around veterans issues. And now, because I'm in that space, and that's kind of more of a spiritual space, I've started another podcast. But these two podcasts I'm holding on to. So, Trail to Transformation, which is specifically around veteran issues, and The Sacred Divine, which is co-hosted with Noemi Barris, is around spiritual transformation. Um, because I'm no longer needing to heal through conversation, I'm able now to kind of give back to the conversation, and I've found my voice. That's what all those conversations have given me. They've given me my voice. They've given me the clarity of my message, and so that's been the essence of my healing journey. Now, therapy good, mentorship good. I'm now in a space where I can give back and pay it forward.
There's something I was going to say earlier and it slipped out of my mind, like clearly is happening today. But it came back to me now. This is all because you took responsibility for your own journey and taking these steps and like stepping into that responsibility and going, hey, if something's going to change, I have to change it. Like I have to start taking different actions to help myself.
Mm-hmm. Not an easy thing to admit, not an easy thing to say, not even an easy thing to think about, but
Right.
absolutely true. And I can't even say with 100% definity here that, that was really what I wanted to do. I just knew something needed to be different.
Yeah.
Otherwise, things would not go well. So with that, I guess I did. I don't look at it from that perspective that I took on responsibility. It was a very slow,
Mm-hmm.
agonizingly slow healing journey. And I didn't even have those conversations to heal. I simply had those conversations because I needed to connect.
Yeah.
But it was through those connections that I became the person. I literally became a person.
Yeah.
One,
Yeah.
but I became a person who was aware of himself again, or maybe even for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Would you say that reaching out to have conversations with other people, were you thinking, I want to have these conversations with other people because maybe they're struggling and I can help them? And in helping them, it will help me? Was that part of your process or
It,
was it?
Again, not there was no forward thinking. There was
Okay.
nothing that said, I wanted to give back. To be quite honest, I mean, I had a lot of I had a lot of conversations, and it
Yeah.
was like, and I mean, easily in 3 years, over 1,000. And that may seem, I don't know what that looks like to people, but that's a lot of conversations to
Yeah.
have with
Yeah.
strangers,
Right.
whether recorded or not.
Yeah.
So some of them, the needing to have that next conversation was so important. I needed to have that next conversation. It was something about
Yeah.
it kept me alive. It kept
Mm-hmm.
me wanting to be alive. For me, that was it. For others, that may not be the space. It may be doing something different. It may be learning something new, going to a different location. For me, it was having those conversations, and every next conversation was an important conversation to have.
Yeah. Before we started recording, you mentioned something about your health and your diet and how that has changed.
I
And
did.
I have to believe. I don't know if you want to touch on that, but I have to believe that that could also contribute to improving your mental health.
So I've been saying that I'm a man throughout this because that's a significant variable. And
Yeah.
I'm short in stature. I'm a U.S. Marine, but I'm short. I'm 5'5", so short in stature. There's lots of ego that is related to being a man, and so not necessarily athletic, but I do call myself an amateur athlete because I do exercise a lot. And typically that means a combination of aerobic and anaerobic. And the anaerobic is typically was based on strength and size. So low repetitions, a lot of proteins, a lot of, very basic. But I was for me, I was at 160. Now that's kind of small for certain people. But again, at 5'5",
Yeah.
160 pounds, ego said I look pretty good.
Yeah.
But what I was doing was killing myself inside. And so I would literally eat just about anything. And then lots of protein shakes, the whey protein, lots of milk consumption, lots and lots of milk consumption. So I was putting on the weight. But my body was telling me, this doesn't feel good.
Mm.
It looks good. It
Yeah.
looked good. My body was telling me it wasn't feeling good. I ignored that. I ignored that all the way up until the point that I had my heart attack.
Oh, geez.
And so I look back, I'm not laughing at it because that was the
Yeah.
significant. That happened in 2022. So October of 2022,
So here you have decided you want to live.
I want to decide that life was valuable to some degree.
Yeah.
And at this point, and so this is my kind of, I want to step in I want to become a public speaker. And so I've kind of created this motto that the Grim Reaper comes calling all the time, and I keep giving it the finger.
Yeah.
Um, Now, one of these days that's going to catch up on me, but until it does, it's a good motto to carry. I did have a heart attack in 2022. Everything that I was doing and how I was living in terms of my exercise and my diet was killing me. So my kidneys were totally jacked up, and of course, my heart stopped. So I had to relearn how to live in a different way. So I wanted to live now, but I really had to restructure my diet, restructure my exercise routine, restructure what all of that really would mean and how I would go about doing it. And to top it all off, this is kind of, I don't like I like more holistic approaches to life.
I'm with you.
Um, I don't like taking medications, and immediately, day one, exiting the hospital, I've got 4 medications, blood thinners and whatever they are, cardiologists. Not They're expensive, but it wasn't even that. It was like I don't like taking medications. So
Yeah.
after my first 30 days after the hospital, I stopped taking the medications, much to the chagrin of my medical team.
Sure.
But and then also the other thing was, you know, take it easy. Your heart's been through trauma. And here I am, 2 days after, I'm home. The first day was complete rest because you don't get rest in the hospital because every 5 minutes somebody's poking you with
Yeah.
something and pulling blood out of something else. And God help you. Um, I'm back on the treadmill. I got to test it. But then I also learned how to eat differently. So almost eradicated milk from my diet and definitely restructured the balance between protein, carbohydrates, fats, and all the other kind of dietary. I'm not a dietitian, so I'm not going to give your audience, what they should and should not do there. But
Right. But
you
what
know,
you were doing.
find your dietitian, find whatever that you need to do. Telling your audience. But for me, it was finding that balance. And so, like I said, I'm an athlete, an amateur athlete, but still an athlete. So I got to get back into some type of routine. And so for me, that meant, okay, well, let's kind of kick in maybe more cardio, maybe more walking. I don't run anymore. I'm too old. Um, More cardio, but still balanced, the weightlifting, but, not going for bulk or size. So a little bit different. So a bit of a backstory. I wrote in 2022. So at the tail end, this is tail end of 2022, the heart attack. And so I had written a book called Walking the Path, a Leader's Journey. And that's about, it's both textual, but there's also a fable and narrative. There's actually a story in the book which talks about a young man taking a group of his friends over a mountain in order to find where they belong in life. So it's metaphorical in nature, but it's, they actually cross over this mountain, or at least reach the top of the mountain at the tail end of the book. I wanted to make it real. For whatever reason, I wanted to make it real,
Mm-hmm.
which also
Yeah.
gave me a new defined purpose. And so
Yep.
that has become, and so tail end of 2022, beginning of 2023, too many 20s in there. Um, I decided that I'm going to hike the Appalachian Trail, and not just a portion of it. I'm going to do the whole thing.
The
It's called
whole
a through
thing.
the through. It's called a through hike. So THRU through hike. So to give context to that, Springer Mountain, Georgia, cut it in Maine, straight up 14 states here in the eastern side of America. 2,193 miles, depending on who you ask or what Google resource gives you what information. So it's easily a 2,100-mile hike. I decided I wanted to do it. I wanted to prove to my body, to my mind, my spirit, and everybody else who knows me that, you know what? Even when life sucks, and sometimes it really does suck, when you put your intention forward and give your life purpose, and this gives my life purpose. Now, it's not the whole reason why I'm alive,
Sure.
but it does give me the motivation to get up out of bed every day, which is good.
Yeah.
Initially, the launch date was 2025 because of Hurricane Helene in 2024, destroying much of the high country in North Carolina and Southern Virginia. I've postponed it to 2026. I'm going to do it. My heart, my mind, everything's focused on through hiking the Appalachian Trail in 2026.
Awesome. And you're going to do this by yourself,
Um,
or
I
are you going to bring some crew?
I would love all that. I'm looking, to be quite honest, I would love some sponsors. If anybody wants to sponsor a veteran, I'm looking to connect with veteran nonprofits. Maybe that would help my efforts. You know, working with veteran agencies and organizations to say, hey, um, let's use this as an opportunity. One, get me through up and over, and raise money for whatever mission that you're aligned with as well. To directly answer your question, I'm probably going to do this on my own. I don't know anybody willing to or can. Now, let's put this into context. Um, Training, like I said, began 2 days after I left the hospital in 2022. But the real training for the Appalachian Trail started in 2023. And at this point, 2 years plus some months later, you know, I hike 12 miles daily, locally. I'm here in
Yeah.
Virginia. I carry a 40-pound backpack. I do a 20-mile plus hike on Sundays to kind of, because I'm going to need to do 20 miles every day to get 2,100 miles done in under 5 months. I'm not taking a whole
Okay.
year.
That's what I
I'm
was
not
going to ask.
taking a
How
whole
long do you
year
think
to
it will
do
take?
this.
Yeah.
But if you round it up to 2,200 miles, doing a 20-mile hike, it should cover about 4 months, maybe a couple of extra days, depending how you logistically plan this out. I'm prepared, and I'll use that word. I'm prepared to do this on my own. Would love to have section hikers, and that's people who might
Yep.
walk a
That's what I was going
couple,
to ask. Yeah.
couple miles with you, or whatever that looks like. I need to create my GoFundMe campaign. $5 here, $5 there. It can buy me some food money
Yeah. Yeah.
along the way, and so there's some logistical elements that I've got to take care of in 2025. But physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, I could leave tomorrow and be good.
Cool. All right. Well, I love your story, and I love that you were willing to come on the show and share it.
Thank you.
And I would love to put links in the show notes. So if you have that GoFundMe by the time we publish this, we can drop that in. And if you don't, we can come back and put it in later. So before we go, I need to ask you about that hype song. And will that song be playing continuously through your headphones as you're hiking the Appalachian Trail?
You're so funny. So I grew up in Philly. So um, Rocky, the movie Rocky,
Yeah.
whatever you want to think about Sylvester Stallone and who he is as a person or an actor, that has always been my that's the best movie ever made, quite
Yeah.
frankly.
Okay.
I mean, it's a love story, but it's the rags to riches, and
Yeah.
the value here. And if anybody's really watched the movie, and this is what 73, 74, God forgive me, or
I
77, I
don't know.
forget.
Was it that
It's
long ago?
it's yeah, it's
I want to
easily
say early 80s.
no,
No?
it's no, it came out in the
70s?
70s. Yeah, it did.
Okay.
No, I don't want to put my foot in my mouth
I'm
because
gonna look it
after
up.
that,
Hold on. While
no,
you
because
keep
after that,
talking, I'm
it's
gonna
like
look it up.
Rambo came out in '80s because Rambo was his alter ego, and so that was another series altogether. But anyway, Rocky,
Oh, you're
the
right.
Rocky,
November 21st, 1976.
1976. So the Rocky theme song is my theme song. Flying High Now is actually the name of the song, and so
Yeah.
so
Awesome.
when he runs up
Yep.
the stairs to the art museum in
Yep.
Philly, I've done that.
Of course you have.
um, but now I feel silly. But anyway, the Rocky theme song and all of his other training montages throughout all of his Rocky and even
Yeah.
Creed 1 and 2. So
Awesome. So that's going to be in your playlist as you're hiking.
well, probably not because to be quite honest, that time on trail is spiritual. It's not even a
Yeah,
physical
I
thing
figured
anymore.
that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
meditate, a lot of affirmations, a lot of confirmations of who I am and what I'm all about. So,
Yeah.
and talking with people, and that because I'm up on, I'm first landing on Sunday, so a couple of days ago from this recording, and I'm the only person with a 40-pound bag. Most people are just kind of walking their dogs or jogging.
Right.
So this lady passes me by, and she's doing her marathon training, and it's like, God, that bag is big. So yeah, it is.
It
I'm
is.
carrying 40 pounds, and says, "What the heck is that all about?" So real briefly, tell her the story, and she mostly it's the question of how heavy is your pack, what the heck are you doing, but not necessarily the why.
Mm.
And so the why question, only people who are because that's not
Yeah.
rarely. I mean, people do hike the Appalachian Trail. People make the attempt to hike the Appalachian Trail. Very few people, in terms of the attempt, the starters, actually do the entire trail. But why would you want to do such a thing?
Right.
And so when I get the why question, I tell them, I said, look, I've made 5 suicide attempts in my life, and I've, like I said, when the Grim Reaper comes to call, I give it the finger. I've got something to prove now, not only for myself, but for everybody else, especially veterans who can't find value of getting out of bed in the morning. And so if I can do it, I want to help you do it. I want to motivate you to do it. So if there's anybody here in your audience, connect with me. If they need to,
Yeah.
let's have a conversation.
That was just going to be my next and last question, which is they can find you on LinkedIn, right? Where do they find you? They
Yeah,
find
they can
you
find me
on
on
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Yeah, that's the best place.
I'll put
I'm
a link to
there
that.
every day. So Keith J. McNally. Don't put the doctor in front of that because I don't use it on that platform. Because if you don't know I'm a doctor, it's hard to find me.
Yeah.
But I do put the doctor on everywhere else I'm on social media because if you just Google Keith McNally, you're going to get the guy in New York who's a restaurant owner, and he looks nothing like me.
Okay. Well, I will make sure I'll put the correct link in the show notes so people can reach out to you and continue a conversation.
I
Keith,
appreciate
thank
it.
you so much for joining me today on Fine is a 4-letter word.
It's been an awesome time. Thank you so much.